Well, good evening, everyone, and I thank you for coming this evening. My name is Herbert Cole, and I am the emergency manager for the city of Livermore. I've been here for about a year, and prior to that, I worked in the city of San Francisco. My background is wide and varied, but about 10 years ago, I took all of my emergency management experience and decided that I was going to make a midlife career change and become an emergency manager full-time. So I took all my experience, I went back to school, and that's what I do now, and I love it. And I'm glad you're here tonight because I'm going to share a little bit of what I know, and we're going to talk about earthquake preparedness. So as we get started here, how many of you have ever felt an earthquake? Raise your hands.
I live in California.
Huh?
I live in California.
Well, there you go. So did you enjoy it, or did it scare you?
Wonderful. I just
Okay. Well, hopefully by the time you leave here, you'll see earthquakes in a different way. So what is a disaster? Somebody tell me what a disaster is. What's a disaster?
Something that's like breaking or like something bad.
Okay, bad. It's a good word. Yeah.
A catastrophic accident.
A catastrophic accident. Ooh, I like that word, catastrophic. Anyone else? Yeah.
It tears down houses.
It what, does what?
It is really bad when it tears down houses.
Okay, tears down houses. Okay. So we're talking like damage, right? Catastrophic damage is what we think about as disaster. So this is a picture that I took at Hurricane Andrew back in the early 90s. The person's house was destroyed literally inside and out, but they kept a sense of humor. And they wrote on the outside, "Life begins at 166 miles per hour." And when I saw that, it kind of stuck with me because it made me think that, okay, here's a person that stuck around and they were in that house when the winds hit, and after speaking to them, they said, "Never again." They said, "I need to figure out next time what I'm going to do. I need to be prepared." And they went through a process where they kind of reevaluated their belief system. And that's what we're going to do tonight. So disasters come in many forms. A natural disaster might be a hurricane, a tornado, an earthquake. They also can be human influence. What's a human influence disaster? Yes?
The shooting.
It could be. What else?
Fire.
A fire could be human influence. Somebody set a fire, yeah.
explosions.
An explosion, okay. What about a technological disaster?
The internet goes down.
The internet goes down. That is a technological disaster. Why?
Communications affected.
Communications go down.
Transportation affected.
Transportation's impacted. What else? Something very important that we use every day. How many of you have actually gone into a bank within the last month and actually talked to a teller? Okay, one. Most of us get our money where? Outside from the machine. That machine requires power. It requires access to the GPS navigation system. It requires access to the internet. So if something happens to any three of those things, you don't get any money. So that could be a technological disaster on a wide scale. And then the main thing is, as I was trying to allude to, this person that I took the picture of their house, it's a matter of perspective. Not everything is a disaster. It's only a disaster because you perceive it to be that way. And what I'm trying to say there is, I live in a beautiful home, I paid a lot of money for it, we've all paid a lot of money for it, and I don't want anything to happen to it, right? So I move into it, and I fix it all up, and I got everything I want in it. I got my big screen TV, I got a refrigerator full of food, I'm sitting down on a Sunday and I go to watch a baseball game or football game. And while I'm watching the game, boom, an earthquake hits. The house starts shaking, it starts rolling, it starts rattling. I'm like, whoa, this is a big earthquake. I mean, everything is moving, and then it stops. Power goes out, cable went out, and I look around and there's nothing else wrong. All my pictures are still hanging on the wall because I've anchored them there with Z-hooks. They're not going to come off. None of my heavy furniture has fallen over because I've anchored to the wall with earthquake straps. My refrigerator full of food is locked shut because I put baby latches on the door so it didn't fly open and throw all of the leftovers from last night onto the floor. All of my drawers and cabinets are locked and closed because they have baby latches on them. Aside from no power and no cable, I look around and my house is in pretty good shape. But my next door neighbor, he didn't do any of those things. Not only did his refrigerator fly open and throw stuff onto the floor, it fell over. All his drawers opened up. All of his cabinets opened up. Everything's on the floor. Some of his pictures flew off the wall. Heavy furniture collapsed onto the floor. Who had a disaster? My neighbor. So it's a matter of perspective. And what we're going to do tonight is kind of get you to shift your perspective, to see earthquakes in a different way, and to start thinking what you can do to change your perspective with regard to preparing, mitigating against, and then kind of figuring out how you're going to recover from it next. So hazards in our area. I'm going to talk about hazards in our area. We're going to talk a lot about earthquakes tonight, but what I really want you to do is start thinking about preparedness, because I can see a hurricane a week out, right? I might be given 30 minutes to an hour that a tornado might hit. But how much warning do you get for an earthquake? Zero. Good, I like that. Zero, right? You get zero. If you're not prepared for an earthquake now, you're not prepared. So if you prepare for an earthquake, you are prepared for anything. You're prepared for flood. Do we have floods here?
No.
We don't?
Sure.
In February 2017, we did.
We could have floods.
We could have floods, and we have had floods here. Have we ever had tornadoes here? Yes. We've had tornadoes here. Not big ones, but we've had F1 tornadoes here, F0 tornadoes. What about, have we ever had an avalanche here?
Yes.
We've had a snow avalanche here?
Oh, no.
No. Have we had mudslides here?
Yes.
And the mudslides are along the beaches up where the mountains, it rains a lot, it flies into the streets out way up along the coast,
Yep.
the water.
And you could have the same thing happen on the Altamont Pass here too. We've got some steep hillsides there, right? So if we had a landslide there, getting out of here,
Your freeway's out.
your freeway, a lot of things can happen here. So we do have hazards here that are, what about wildfire? We ever had a wildfire here? We've had them close by. We haven't had anything like Santa Rosa though,
Yes.
and I hope we never do. But it's something we need to think about. And the reason we think about these hazards is because a disaster results from a vulnerability to that hazard. My neighbor was vulnerable to the hazard of earthquake. Why?
Because he didn't prepare for it.
He did not prepare for it. You're exactly right. I prepared for it. I reduced my vulnerability. So think about the hazards in your area and what we can do to reduce our vulnerability.
What was that again? Disasters result from?
Vulnerability to a hazard. So if you're vulnerable to a hazard, you are probably going to experience a disaster. Disaster preparedness, what does it mean to you? Somebody tell me, what does disaster preparedness mean to you? What does it mean to you?
Preparing for all disasters.
Preparing for all disasters. So how might you do that? What would you do to prepare?
Well, everything to the walls. Try and get a basement. So,
Okay.
like, if a tornado happens or a hurricane.
Okay. How about you?
Get food and water ready.
Food and water ready. Okay, that's a preparedness step. What else? So when we start thinking about preparedness, a lot of people think about gathering things, getting things together so that if something happens, I have things. That's a tiny piece of it. So when you think about preparing, think about how you're going to respond. We prepare so that we can respond. And one of the things that we have to prepare for is being alone for 7 to 10 days after a major earthquake. There are not enough firefighters, police officers, or first responders anywhere in the Bay Area to support the population that we have. That is a fact. How many firefighters do you think are on duty right now in Livermore? How many?
Actually, I don't have a guess.
You don't have a good guess? Anybody? What do you think?
Well,
It's about 16. What's the population of Livermore?
Almost
85,000.
90,000. Let's say during the daytime with people on the freeway, we're up around 100. So you have 16 firefighters, we have 100,000 people in our area, there's a major earthquake. 1% of that population needs immediate life-saving care in the first hour. That's how many people out of 100,000? 1,000. It's 1%, right? 1,000 people. Okay, 15 to 16 firefighters treat 1,000 people in 1 hour. Can they even get to them if there's a major earthquake? So you need to start thinking, what am I going to do if help can't get to me? 7 to 10 days is now the rule. It used to be 3. Now, as things have emerged, looking at what happens in the hurricanes and what happened after Northridge and what happened after Lower Pieta was a little bit different because it was fairly isolated. But a lot of people didn't get services within that 3-day period everybody thought. Start thinking 7 to 10 days. Also, if it is a large earthquake in the Bay Area, where do you think most of the resources are going to go?
Hospitals?
Well, not necessarily hospitals, but what area of the Bay Area do you think everything's going to go to? It's going to go to San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose. That's where the population center is. So that's another reason we need to start thinking about 7 to 10 days on our own. In addition to the physical preparedness steps, you also need to start taking psychological preparedness steps. You need to start thinking about, okay, how is this going to impact me? 7 to 10 days, that's a long time. What do I need to do to start preparing myself psychologically? It's all about shifting your perspective. Earthquakes are not scary if you understand them and you know what to expect. How many of you remember Disneyland with the ticket books? Remember the e-ticket rides? Those were the best, right? So I will suggest to you that an earthquake is the greatest e-ticket ride you will ever experience. If you're standing in a field with no buildings around you and it's a beautiful sunny day. But if you're in a building, it can be pretty scary, right? So what you need to do is start thinking about, how do I change that perspective? E-ticket ride or scary? And so I already said, we prepare so that we may respond. The extent of our response need is determined by our preparation and mitigation efforts. So you nailed it back there when you said, let's go ahead and collect food and water, right? So we need food and water. Because our ability to respond is going to be based on material goods. Response means, do I have shelter? Do I have food? Do I have water? Do I have things to take care of my pets? These are all the preparations I'm going to make so that when the event occurs, I can feed my animals. I can shelter my animals. I can feed myself, shelter myself. I have a place to go to the bathroom. Think about this. Where are you going to go to the bathroom if all the water's gone and the sewer lines break? Yeah?
You bring a bunch of hand sanitizer and you bring a shovel and you dig a hole.
Okay, that's one option. Or you could go down to Home Depot or someplace and get a 5-gallon bucket with a toilet seat, a bag, some bags, some kitty litter. You have a place to go to the restroom. People don't think about that. So how we respond is going to be based on how we prepare. Our response can be like a chicken with its head cut off going, I don't know what to do. I didn't prepare. But if I prepared both physically and psychologically, I say, well, you know what? I have a plan in place. I have the things that I need. I'm going to put this all into action right now. I've practiced this. We're just going to go through the motions that we practice. So now we're starting to put this plan into place that we've created. We'll talk a little bit about doing a plan because our primary goal is resilience. What does resilience mean? It means if I get hit, I bounce back, right? And that's what we're looking for. By changing our perspective, we are going to become more resilient. We're going to prepare, we're going to get everything ready, everything we need. Boom, knock me down, I'm back up. May not be the same as before, but I will be back up. So we want to build a kit. The 10 things you want in your kit, this is just your starter. You can add whatever you need to it, but you will need water first and foremost. You cannot live without water. You may live a week or two without food, and by that time we will be getting food in here, but you can't live long without water. So make sure you have water. The recommended amount is 3 gallons per person per day. It's a lot of water. If the best you can do is 1 gallon per person per day, then do that. But recommended 3 gallons per person per day. And don't forget your pets. They need water too. First aid kit. A flashlight with spare batteries. A whistle. Why do we need a whistle? Why?
So that people can hear you when you might be in trouble.
That's right. Or the earthquake, because the earthquake is not going to occur at 2 p.m. on a beautiful Saturday afternoon with light winds and puffy clouds in the sky. It's probably going to occur at 2:30 in the morning when it's 32 degrees outside, pouring down rain, the wind is howling. And then everything's going to come crashing down in your house because you haven't mitigated, you haven't hung the pictures and everything, right? But you're going to do that.
Can I just ask you something?
Huh?
Did you say that if one of a very big earthquake hits, it could potentially be in the middle of the night when it's raining in the middle of the night?
Yeah, it could be the worst weather in the world. And as people come around, and I don't know why you would be trapped in your house, but let's say some furniture fell in your pen, you have a whistle. You can blow that whistle all night long without any effort. But scream an hour for help, and what happens? Nobody's going to hear a word. So have a whistle. Food, an AM, FM radio so that you can hear what's going on out in the world. You will receive emergency notification information through AM radio, FM radio. Multi-tool and duct tape. A multi-tool is like one of those plier Leathermans, one of those. Cash and small bills. Because if the power goes out, the internet goes down, the ATM's not going to do you any good. So have some cash on hand. Toilet paper and hygiene supplies. So when I worked Hurricane Andrew, nobody wanted food. Nobody cared about water. They already had enough water. They had a hurricane come through. What they wanted was toilet paper and feminine hygiene supplies and baby diapers. Nobody thought about having that stuff. Toilet paper is gold. Toilet paper is going to be the one thing that people are scrambling for. I saw it with my own eyes. Yep.
So that means if an earthquake happens and you get stuck and you have to try and get toilet paper, the people are going to be selling it for really expensive prices.
And there you go.
Economics.
He's got it. And that actually happened in Florida. We saw people on the side of the road selling cases of toilet paper for like $20. So if you don't think about those things, you've never experienced it, most people don't think about that. So toilet paper, hygiene supplies, definitely want to have it. And then you want to change of layered clothing. You want to go from hot to cold. So if it's summertime and it's really, really hot, then you want to dress for that. But let's say that we're in the bridge season, like right now. It was really warm today, right? But it's going to get cold tonight, so you want to be layered clothing in there.
I already have enough sweaters.
Well, you have sweaters, you have shorts, you just kind of want to layer things so that if it does happen in this type of season, you can be ready. So that's kind of where you start. You want to make a plan. So you want a plan that's basically going to cover every single person in your family. And this plan is not only for you, it's for the people that come to help you. They may need to identify people. Somebody's missing, you can't find them. This is the information that you're going to share. So you want the name of each person that's going to be covered under your plan. You want their home, work, school address, phone numbers, date of birth, age, any medical conditions that they might have, driver's license, social security numbers, any identification cards. You want copies of all of that. You want a photograph that's recent of the person. You want to identify their physical description, hair color, eye color, any access and functional needs that they might have. So somebody might be allergic to something, and if they end up at a shelter, and the shelter people are feeding food that this person is allergic to, we need to know that. Communication needs to be part of your plan. Yes?
Regarding the makeup plan about the names and labeling them, does it need to be put into the 10 essentials that you mentioned?
I would definitely put your plan into your 10 essentials. Once you create your plan, make it part of your kit. Definitely. So aside from the part of identifying the people in your plan, you want to make a communications plan. You want in that plan an evacuation map of your home. Whether it's a fire, an earthquake, a chemical spill in the neighborhood, whatever it is, how are you and your family going to get out of the home? When I first started doing this, you know how in hotels they have a little map on the back of the door? So my kids live in Southern California. They used to come up and visit every once in a while. And so on the back of each of the doors, I made a little map, and I said, this is where we meet. If it's local to the house, if we have to leave the neighborhood, here's the park you go to. So there's a little map on, and they were saying, Dad, this is dumb. And I was like, well, it's really not, because you don't live up here all the time, and then we do have people come visit us, and in the middle of the night, people don't think when the house is on fire. And so the idea is to have people just kind of put it in their head. You want to practice this with your family too, so create that plan, communications plan. Identify a neighborhood reunification spot, at least within a mile of your home. Then you want a local spot, which is at least 5 miles from your home. And then you want an out-of-area spot that's at least 10 miles from your home. Does everybody remember what happened in Mooresville about 1.5 years ago? So people came home from work and were told, get out. Where do I go? I have no idea. And if you watched the news, you saw a line of cars, thousands of cars lined up trying to get out. What would have happened if that dam had broken? Everybody was trying to figure out where to go, and they were told, hey, we're going to have an evacuation center at the fairgrounds up in Chico. Where'd everybody go? Let's all go to Chico. That may not be the best thing. Some people could have gone south. If you have identified locations and your family knows where to go, do it. Map location, map how to get to and from those locations also. Also have an out-of-state emergency contact. If it's a large regional event that we have here, like a major earthquake, the people that you plan on contacting in San Jose may be in the same situation as you. So if you can find somebody out of the immediate area or out of the region, do that. And the last thing is in your plan is you need to take all your important documents, you need to scan them or make photocopies of them, and you need to put them in your plan. And the reason is because if it is a large event like an earthquake and fires break out, your house burns to the ground and everything's gone with it, how are you going to rebuild your life? What were your bank account numbers? What were your insurance accounts? All of those things, you need that information. Passports, driver's license copies, social security card, all of that. Make copies of all of that and keep that with your kid. Better yet, if you can put it on a USB drive, like a little thumb drive, scan it all, put it on that, you have it with you so that when you do get to a shelter location or an evacuation center and they start asking you, we're here to help you, you have all that information readily available for them on that disk or that drive. When the disaster is over, in this case an earthquake, there's some things that have to happen immediately. And that is, you're going to need to put out any small fires, so I would strongly suggest you get trained on how to use a fire extinguisher. You're going to need to clean up any spills. That means all of my neighbors cleaning up all the food and all the chemicals under his sink, on his floor. And you need to know how to turn off the gas, only if you smell it. If you do turn off the gas and there wasn't a reason to, PG&E needs to come out and turn it on for you. And that could be days or even weeks if it's a large event. Turn off the water, know how to do that, and then turn off the power. Assign people those roles so that in your plan, when something happens, everybody knows what they need to do. And then practice. Don't actually turn things off, but go to where you're going to do your job. in practice. A plan is worthless if you don't test it. You know, a lot of places, businesses, cities, they create plans and they throw them up on a shelf saying, well, we got a plan. They don't know what's in it, but they have a plan. So it's the same with you. If you create a disaster plan, go ahead and test it out. Hold quarterly drills. It's not hard. When it's time change, have a drill in your house. Say, hey, this is our evacuation drill. This is going to be our fire drill. This is going to be the communication drill. Where do we all go and meet? And then if you really want to get into it, do an economic stress test. Figure out how long you can go without paying your bills or being out of work. Because if it is a large earthquake, businesses may be destroyed or go out of business, and then what are you going to do? So think about that. And then as you go through and you test this, things that don't work, fix them. So hey, you know what, that didn't work, let's try a different thing next time. Get educated, get engaged, join the CERT teams. CERT's a great thing. You will learn all kinds of skills that will take the pressure off of the first responders in the immediate hours after an event.
What's the name of it?
CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, CERT. It's taught by the fire department. It's a really good program. It is 20 hours of training, and it will go along with, even if you don't want to be actively involved, the training in and of itself is worth it. And you will be prepared at home. It's free also.
It helps you to help others too? It helps you to help others too?
Yes, it does. The whole concept behind it is take care of yourself first, take care of your family, then take care of your neighbors, and you all work together to basically make your community stronger. Other opportunities are...
What number maybe?
It's through the Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department.
Okay.
What's that amateur radio thing?
So I was going to talk about that. So there's a couple of things here. We have Skyward Storm Spotter. National Weather Service will be here next month, and they will be offering Storm Spotter training. That trains citizens on what to look for when we have extreme weather events and what the National Weather Service wants to see, because they're located in Monterey. They're looking at a radar that is at an angle that may not see what's actually happening here in the valley, because it's blocked by hills, one, and then two, it's also at a higher angle. So there might be precipitation events happening here, heavy rain that they're not seeing. They would want to know that. And don't assume that they know everything, because a lot of times they'll get reports of hail and they didn't even know that there was even any weather in that area. So we work with them. They come out every year and they do storm spotter training for us. Also, ham radio, amateur radio. If you're interested in communications, amateur radio is really the only thing that will work following a disaster. Cell phones will come back pretty quickly, but if there's catastrophic damage, it's not going to be immediately. Ham radio operators step up almost immediately, and they become the communications lifeline for communities. We rely on them here in the city as a backup communication system. The state of California relies on them. Pretty much every jurisdiction in the
Is
country.
it the people that are out of the area who see from a distance what's going on, and they let us know? Is that what that's about?
That could happen. That could happen, or it could also be working with people in the local community to organize. It's almost like social media. You know, people go, you know, this is what's happening here, and these CERT teams are mobilizing to here, and can people come and help? So it's just a great way of getting people
What
to...
does HAM stand for, and where are they?
So the ham is just kind of it's a weird, it's not even an acronym, it's just a tag that was put on amateur radio, I want to say in the 20s or 30s, because amateur radios were considered to be hams, or ham-fisted, when they would use the telegraph key. So somebody that was ham-fisted would be pounding on the key versus somebody that could finesse the key. And that's ham radio used to be all...
But they're not people out there on their walkie-talkies or things like that?
There are people out there, even on a daily basis, and that's who they really are, the amateur radio operators really is. You can become a Red Cross volunteer, and then become CPR and AED first aid trained. So these types of things are going to help you psychologically, because once you start to get trained and prepared and you start to build your resources, now all of a sudden this earthquake isn't going to be that scary, because you're going, oh, I've got the stuff I need, I've got some training, I've thought about what I'm going to do if this occurs, so I'm starting to change my perspective. I'm not going, ooh, this is a scary monster. It's not. It's just a natural event, just like a windstorm or anything else, but I just need to I need to do more to prepare for it. And then finally, what I would ask you to do is go ahead and sign up for AC Alert. This is Alameda County's mass notification system. It's an opt-in system right now. And if you go to acgov.org/emergency site, all one word, emergency site, you can register for this. And what will happen is in a large notification event, let's say there's a fire like happened in Sonoma, or there's a chemical spill on the freeway, and the county needs to notify us that something has occurred, they will push things out using AC Alert. AC Alert can reach cell phones, email, home telephones. It's and the city has adopted it also. Our police dispatch will be using this in the city. So if the city needs to send out an alert, we would be using this system also.
So it just kind of come up on your phone or whatever, it's an alert, right?
It comes up as an alert. It'll say something like Alameda County Sheriff recommends shelter in place due to hazardous materials spill, something like that. So, while you're here, earthquakes, right? So once again, earthquakes are not scary. They can be damaging if you're not prepared, or depending on the type of building you're in. But for the most part, earthquakes are benign natural events. They don't care that you're a human, they don't care that you're a dog or a cat, they don't care what time of day it is, what year it is. It's just an event that happens. And that's how we need to think about it. It's a natural event, just like the wind blows, just like the rain falls. We have earthquakes. Earthquakes do cause damage. In this particular case, this is either petroleum up in Northern California or New Zealand. I believe that's New Zealand. These people, their house fell down. This is the freeway, the I-5, just outside of Silmar, California, in Southern California. This is Coalinga, California, this just in the Coast Hills, just to the west of Fresno. This is a bunch of people lining up for water and food. This is a broken water main that has flooded the street, along with a broken gas main and fire, and there are a whole bunch of power lines that are laying down that you can't really see there. And then the last one, this is Kaiser Hospital down in the San Fernando Valley. So why are these pictures here? They're to give you an idea as to what an earthquake can do. Earthquakes will impact your ability to live in a house or any type of shelter. They will impact our transportation infrastructure, meaning that we may not get food and water from the Safeway because Safeway can't get food and water to them. The Coalinga one is a TV, I didn't know any other way to figure out services, but daily services that we rely upon. Getting our hair cut, going to the vet, just wandering around the hardware store, looking at what they got this week. All those things that we take for granted can be removed by an earthquake. Food and water. These people couldn't go to Safeway because Safeway didn't have anything. So they had to line up for food and water. This represents the loss of utilities. No gas, no water, no sewer, no power. And then the last one is critical infrastructure. It could be hospitals, it could be the police station, it could be the fire station. So things that we rely on for critical services could be damaged and lost. So not to get deep into the woods here, or into the grass or whatever you want to call it, your weeds. Earthquakes are natural events, like I said, and they're caused by geologic forces. And basically, if you know anything about plate tectonics, we have all these little plates floating on a giant raft of like plastic molten earth called magma. So if you think about an apple pie has a crust on the top, and it has that little gooey filling, right? So think of that gooey filling as magma. That's what the crust is floating on, right? But you can see little cracks in that pie crust every once in a while, right? Those are weak spots. The earth is the same way. The crust has weak spots. And if you took two halves of a pie and smashed them together, what's going to end up is you're going to start to see where the weak spots occur. Those are called faults. And that's what we have here in California. We have faults. Because where we reside is in an area like this right here that's called a transform boundary. And a transform boundary is where two plates mash up against each other. Just like two pies would be mashing up against each other. On the other side of the world, they have what's called subduction zones, and even up by Washington, they have what's called a subduction zone, where one pie dives under the other pie, and then is recycled and comes around and around and around. But where we're at, our area of subduction is so far inland that a long, long, long time ago, the two pies just decided that they were going to, instead of one diving into the other, they were just going to kind of move together. One's going to go one way, the other's going to go the other way. And what happens is every once in a while, those two crusts, those two pieces of the pie will stick. And when those two pieces of the pie stick, they build up pressure. Because remember, they're floating on that magma, right? Well, eventually, so much energy builds up that it has to break. Just like a rubber band. If you stretch it, stretch it, stretch it, eventually it's going to break, right? And that's what happens. We have a sudden slipping or movement of the Earth's crust. It snaps, and then it releases all of that energy. And as that energy radiates out from that broken rock, that's what we start to feel. And that's the earthquake. It's just a natural process. It happens everywhere. Earthquakes happen everywhere on Earth. We get most of them in California, Alaska, and along the Pacific Rim, but they happen everywhere. Yes?
I just Googled last week how many we've had in San Francisco, I think, more than 30 in the last 30 days. And then here in the Tri-Valley, like maybe 6 or 8 or more. And in California alone, over the last 30 days, if I remember correctly, it's, I don't know, but it's hundreds.
Yeah. And there are, I think the number is about 500,000 earthquakes occur on an annual basis. A lot of earthquakes. But only 100 of them cause any damage. So if you think 500,000 and only 100 cause damage, it's not a lot. So we're lucky that most of them occur out at sea, out in the ocean, or they occur in places like Alaska or Siberia or Antarctica actually has earthquakes.
So is it fair to say that like a rubber band stretches, if you stretch one too many times and it snaps and breaks, and things shake, right? That's like the earthquake.
That's the energy release. That's that energy is released when it breaks. That's what an earthquake is doing. It's just snap. So the USGS estimates that there is a 99.7%, that's basically 100%, right? Probability of a magnitude 6.7 or larger earthquake in California within, well now it's not 30 years, but 14, 15 years. So it's going to happen, and it'll happen in our lifetimes. So we always hear about how big was that earthquake. So when that rock breaks and all that energy radiates out, what is the first thing you want to know? Everybody goes, how big was it? And so what do you ask? What are we looking for? What is the name that we're looking for?
Richter scale.
Richter scale. So what does the Richter scale tell you? What does it tell you? How strong an earthquake was. Okay. So if you told me that it was a 5.0 earthquake, is that a big earthquake?
Pretty much.
Depends. Because once again, it's perspective. If I lived in Iran and we had a 5.0 earthquake, I'm pretty much guaranteeing that pretty much every building around me is going to come down. Unless I live in Tehran or someplace where
Is
they have
that
a
because
building codes.
the
But
buildings are made of mud?
buildings are made out of their shoddy construction.
Right, so a 5-point earthquake is considered a larger earthquake. The 2, 3, and 4 is medium. We don't think a 5 would be.
Because of our building, because of the way we build.
5 is just a building of what getting larger.
That's right. So a 5.0 here is not the same as if I lived in Iran. And that's why when we see all the tragic, videos coming out of Iran, especially in the last, I think it was 6 months ago, they had another one. And it was not a very large earthquake. And it's because a lot of the buildings they have there are extremely old. They are built out of the materials that they have at hand. And unfortunately, those are not the types of materials that hold up well to an earthquake that's 5.0. 5.0 here, you would probably see some things move around and go, wow, we just had an earthquake. Now, if I said it was an 8.0 earthquake, is that going to mean something to you?
But if you're standing outside on the earth, that 5.0 is going to make us move.
Maybe,
Moving.
maybe. So the Richter scale doesn't really tell me anything. The Richter scale tells me how much energy was released. It could be a 5 and it could be devastating depending on where I live, or it could not have any impact at all. What I'm looking for, and what you should start looking for, is what's called MMI, or Modified Mercalli Index or Indicator. You'll hear it called either or, index or indicator. And what it is it's a scale that goes from 1 to 10 plus, and it is a measure of perceived shaking. What causes damage in an earthquake? The shaking, back and forth, right? So now when somebody tells me, hey, you know what, that was an MMI 7, oh, boom, I know exactly what that means. That's very strong shaking, I'm going to have moderate damage.
What is it again that would be?
Huh?
What's the name of that? That's very.
Modified Mercalli Index or Indicator. So just MMI is a way that you can look
The
at it.
MMI. And
MMI.
what is the MMI again?
It's the modified,
No, what does it tell?
it's telling me the perceived shaking of the earthquake. So the Richter scale gives me the amount of energy released, which we've kind of shown that a 5 in another part of the world is different than a 5 here. So it's not really going to tell me a lot. But if you give me the MMI, I'm going to know immediately that the shaking was of such a severity that I can expect this type of damage. So when you hear about an earthquake on the news, go and look for the MMI. That will give you an idea as to how bad that earthquake is. So this is where we live. We live right there. Can you see that? And this is a scenario. This is actually what is to be expected if an event occurred like this. This is USGS model. They use supercomputers to put all this data in. They go, this is what we know is probably going to happen. They look at the soil types that the energy is transferred through. They look at, population density. They look at all kinds of things, and they come up with these really neat models, and then they put them into motion. So this particular one is a scenario on the Hayward Fault where it intersects with the Rogers Creek Fault. So this is the fault that runs basically out of San Pablo Bay to the north, and it intersects the Hayward Fault, which heads to the south. Once again, we're located right here. This scenario is going to give you an idea as to what could happen if there was a 7.2 earthquake at the intersection of the Hayward and the Rogers Creek Fault.
Did that other screen say that by 2032 that a 6.7 or more is expected?
That is correct.
What do they think? I mean, could it really be an 8.5?
It could be anything above that.
Even a 10?
Well, 10s are theoretically possible, but physically
So
never
we're
been
looking more at
experienced.
6.7 to like 8 something?
Yeah, 6.7 is a big earthquake. Loma Prieta was like a 6.8, I think.
Because if we had a 6.7 here, this building, I think is.
No, this building would be fine.
This building would be fine?
would be shaken up, but you would be,
So anything built, what, 1999 and forward would be?
it just depends, like if it's a wood frame construction house, 1973, I believe is when the construction codes would change to include seismic. 6.7 is gonna probably rattle things and maybe cause some slight damage, but it's not gonna be devastating.
So then
At least it
higher
shouldn't.
go up, 7.7, 8.7.
Each one of those is 10 times. So, in this particular case though, what we're going to do is I want you to count, because you're going to see the first waves that come out of here are going to be blue. When the blue hits Livermore, I want you to start counting, because that's when you're going to feel it. And then when the yellow hits Livermore, I want you to stop. Okay, tell me how many seconds that is. All right, so here we go. But I also want you to watch the colors, because remember, this is the color scale. So if it's light blue or no color at all, you're not feeling it. But once you start getting into these yellows, these oranges, these reds, and this dark magenta, that right there, you're going to feel. That's going to wake you up, throw you out of bed, move you around. That's that NMI that I was talking about that's catastrophic. So here we go. Earthquake just occurred. Took 15 seconds and just hit Livermore, so let's count. And boom, now everything's moving and rolling. So you've got the first jolt, boom, and now everything's rock and rolling. Now look at all that dark coming at us. Wham, that's the third hit. That's violent. That's violent. Every window in here just blew out. This whole building is moving back and forth.
What are you saying, that if the earthquake affected more than one area?
Well, no, I'm saying that the amount of energy, the shaking, based on this model, was very, very extreme.
What was the magnitude?
7.2.
And
But if you look at other areas throughout the Bay Area, so look, Livermore is in that red area, right? But look at other areas. San Francisco's kind of in a light, oh yeah, we just had a little earthquake, right? Why is that?
because that fault, right?
Well, it's the fault, and it also has to do with the geology and how that energy is transmitted through the ground.
So it's really going to,
Well, this is just a model. This is just a scenario. So this isn't like,
but you said it was a 7.2.
yes, it's a 7.2, but the idea is to get you to start thinking about, this is what could really happen
And
here.
that red, orange, what does that mean again? That's where everyone's really been
It's
affected.
really violent shaking.
Well, then you just basically said, and sometime up the road, we're really gonna feel it here.
That's right, we will. And that's why you're here tonight, right? To start preparing and thinking and changing your perspective. Because now that I know what this is gonna be like, now I can say, okay, it's gonna be shaking this bad, then I need to make sure I have the things I need,
Prepared.
right?
And just move away from the fault.
Well, it's gonna be kind of hard because the San Andreas fault zone really
But
goes a long way
does it
inland.
affect Tracy?
It would probably impact Tracy, because Tracy, I'm guessing, is right here.
So what I might do is Google all the faults in the Bay Area.
And you would be surprised, because it's just like that pie. You know, the apple pie, when you smash together all the little cracks? California is filled with faults. Look at Nevada. Nevada is full of faults.
So we're only looking at the Hayward one.
Yeah, this is only the Hayward. This is just an earthquake that occurred there.
So the fact that you gave the knowledge that between now and 2032, a 6.7 or higher is a possibility.
That's according to the USGS.
Okay, does that mean all these other faults are also having the same, the 6.7?
No. So that is, let me clarify.
This is the
that.
target one, the bigger one.
Yes, so the bigger faults, like the San Andreas, the Hayward fault, the Calaveras fault, those are the ones that are capable of releasing that type of energy. Not every fault is capable of that type of energy. But the Hayward fault is the one that we all hear about in the news, right? And that's the one they're really kind of worried about. Yes?
So basically a place to keep all the supplies, I would keep it in the garage. I don't know if things fall in the garage and you don't have access.
I'll
to
show
it.
you that in a second, okay? That's a good question. I have an answer for you.
Tracy
So-
would be less, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So Tracy would be less, it wouldn't be as bad as it is.
Probably, they're probably going to get shaken also, but, you know, all that energy has to now go through the hillsides, and then it gets, there's a whole lot of things that happen. Like I said, I don't want to get really into the weeds. I'm not a geologist, I'm not a seismologist. I know enough to know what I need to know and what I need to prepare for. And the bottom line is, with that type of model, I want to make sure that I have everything in place so that I can survive it. Yes?
In 1980, I was here, and we moved in 1973 from Danville to here, and I was very young. We had one of the oldest houses in Livermore, and the house, all the walls fell out, and we had to leave within, like, that day. We couldn't come back. Me, my brother, my mother, my stepdad, right here up the street. We moved into a church kitchen for about 30 days at the Presbyterian church until we found another home. My dad actually was killed that weekend. We got a phone call, and I'm just saying that when I was in that school, Fifth Street School, the whole thing was like we're on a train. You could hear the whole building, and it was like a 4.6 only. And there was damage, you know, and I'm just saying.
That was probably the Greenville quake, and because we're sitting on that fault. It was a small earthquake, but because of our location and proximity to that fault, damage did occur. The lab sits right on that fault. So that's
His office was open.
right. Yeah. So it's. You
I
know,
was thinking if the lab picked up this location, it would be safe. But
it's safe. They've done a lot to reinforce it. So and the size of the earthquake that would occur on the Greenville is that 6.7. So they pretty much make sure that everything.
Earthquakes do not affect everybody, but when they do, you never forget it.
That's right. And that's the whole idea of perspective.
You don't want it, you know?
You want to change perspective. So if the earthquake occurs, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to drop to the floor. You're going to cover yourself, hopefully by climbing under a table or pulling the chair over your head. Right? You want to protect your head and your neck. And then you want to hold on, because if it is a big earthquake, everything's going to be moving around. When the shaking stops, you're going to evaluate your immediate surroundings. Is it okay to get up and get out of here? Are the people around me okay? Do they need help? And then you're going to decide whether or not you're going to stay or get out. If you're in bed, curl up in a ball, cover your head with a pillow, pull the blankets up over you, just like if the boogeyman was coming to get you, right? So you're going to basically curl up and you're going to hold on, because if it is a big earthquake, your bed's going to start moving around. I was in Bakersfield, California on October 17, 1999. I will never forget it. I was on my way to Mount Whitney to climb it, and about 4:30, 5 in the morning, I was woken up. It was an earthquake, and it was a big earthquake because the bed I was in started moving. It was a king-size bed in a hotel. And I'm like, wow. And I go, LA just dropped off the face of the earth. Turned on the news, nothing. It was an earthquake almost 300 miles away from Bakersfield, out in the desert by Barstow, called Hector Mine. 7.2 earthquake, just like that. The shaking was extreme, and it moved to bed 300 miles away. So hold on. Yeah.
So during science class, they were talking about, like, I don't know if you've heard of it, but the triangle of life, where would that work?
Don't do it. Don't do it. We don't teach it here. Just duck, cover, and hold on. The triangle of life is not something that we teach here.
Because if anything's going to fall on you, if you're under a table, then it'll fall on the table. The table may save your life, right?
The triangle of life kind of presupposes a lot of magical things are going to happen. Yes?
well, the only dining table we have in the house is a cement table. So if that breaks, it falls on your head when you're underneath it. I don't know if it's a good idea.
The chances of your home collapsing, though, when was your home built, do you know?
1980,
Your house
and
is
it's 2 stairs.
probably not going to collapse. Probably will move, it might rack, meaning it might get twisted, the frame might twist, and it might not be something you can live in anymore, but chances are it is not going to collapse on you. That would be extremely rare.
So what year is it that it's not good?
For the most part, any wood frame construction is going to be resilient. In 1973, they changed the size, they changed the codes, but that was mainly to anchor foundations and things like that. But for the most part, single family, single story, two-story wood frame construction is pretty resilient. I'm not an engineer, and I'm not going to say that it's not going to collapse, but for the most part, experience has shown throughout all the earthquakes, it doesn't happen. If you look at Japan and the Tohoku earthquake that they had, in 2011, all the damage was caused by the tsunami. Buildings, everything survived. Even 1,000-year-old homes, up in the hills survived the earthquake. They didn't survive the tsunami. So our construction methods are pretty resilient. So in bed, stay in bed. If you're in a wheelchair, you want to lock the wheels, you want to cover your head. If you have a book, a purse, a bag, whatever, cover your head, protect yourself, and you want to hold your position until the shaking stops. Evaluate everything, and then decide if you're going to leave or stay. If you're in a vehicle, you want to pull over to the side of the road. Do not pull under overpasses. Stay away from buildings if you can, power lines, trees. You want to get as out in the open as you can on the side of the road. You want to, also, I would strongly suggest if you have a commute, know your commute route, because my commute route takes me over 3 bridges that you really wouldn't know are there, that are over creeks and arroyos. And if there was a large-scale earthquake and it's dark and there's no lights and I'm driving along, I might just go bloop. So when you pull over and you're in a vehicle in an earthquake, consider, am I going to be able to get to my destination? Because it may not be worth it to go ahead and move on from where you're at. Mitigation, that basically means we're going to go ahead and we're going to limit or eliminate the risk. And in this case, earthquake mitigation means we're going to anchor heavy furniture, water heaters, large appliances, pictures. We're going to secure the doors on our refrigerators, drawers, and cabinets. And we're going to use earthquake anchors to do that, or earthquake latches. They have them, they're approved, you can buy them at the hardware store.
But you only, nail stuff to walls if you're living in multiple earthquakes.
I use what are called Z-hooks. It's a little plastic, looks like a brick, and it's got a little place for the wire to slide into, so it goes down, up, and then back down. So no matter how hard the wall would fall down, but the picture would still be on the wall. So they're not coming off.
What do you call that?
It's called a Z-hook.
Zero.
Z-hook.
What would you use to determine what's moving?
Huh?
What would you use to determine what's moving in the house?
I would be watching the walls probably. And then last, to mitigate, I would strongly suggest, it is expensive, but purchase earthquake insurance. Your homeowner's insurance will not cover any damage caused by an earthquake. So if there is damage to your home, and if you rent, still get an earthquake policy, because if where you live is damaged, it comes with, I'm not going to say housing assistance, but if you have to move out, you get living expense, so you could actually move someplace else and have rent. So that is a mitigation measure I would strongly suggest. So the question was, where do you put all this stuff? So my earthquake preparedness kit is right here. I've got a 50-gallon drum of water, and this is basically a garbage can. I don't know what you call it. It's basically to put 2 13-gallon garbage cans, or the 20-gallon garbage cans, whatever the big blue ones that usually are, that you used to have. And basically I have 2 tents in there, camping equipment, all my cats have food, they have water. I have 2 cases of MREs in there, first aid kits, I've got pry bars in there, shovels, I've got a 5-gallon bucket with the toilet seats and plastic bags and kitty litter and lots of toilet paper. And everything just goes in that box. And that box sits outside, and that's just where it sits. So if you don't have space to do something like that, just take a rolling garbage can, the blue ones with the plastic lid, take what you think you might need, and put it in there. And then that way you can store it in your apartment or in your condominium if you're short on space, or even in your home if you don't have a lot of space, and at least you can roll it out. But I would strongly suggest start with that list we had, include some shelter stuff in there too, like a tent and things like that. So, earthquake preparedness we talked about. You want to develop your plan. Make one specific to the earthquake. Conduct earthquake drills. What do? Duck cover and hold on. Develop a plan for reuniting your family members. That's your communications plan we talked about. Identify that out-of-state family contact. Very, very important. Or out of region, doesn't have to be out of state. Keep supplies on hand. So if you take something out of your kit, make sure you put it back. Because the last thing you want to do is go, oh yeah, I took all that water because I went on a camping trip and now we decided I don't have any water. And then keep your vehicle gas tank at half a tank. I want you all to say this with me. Half a tank is the new empty. Ready? Half a tank is the new empty. Once again, half a tank is the new empty. One more time. Half a tank is the new empty. Why? Well, if you saw Hurricane Rita a few years ago, bearing down on Houston, Houston in their infinite wisdom said, let's evacuate. So they pushed millions of people onto the freeway to get out of town. A lot of them couldn't get gas because the lines were so long, they said, I'll just get it down the road. Well, they got stuck on the road because nobody was moving. They ran out of gas, and now they're stuck on the road with no gas and a hurricane bearing down on them.
Oh my goodness.
Luckily, nothing happened. But if you need to get out of Dodge fast, you're going to want to have gas in your tank. Never let it go below half a tank. When it hits half a tank, say, hey, you know what, it's time to pull over and get some gas. One, you'll feel better because you just didn't spend $90 on filling up your tank. And you'll have gas in the event that you have to get out of here. Right? When the earthquake occurs, you are going to activate, execute, and respond. You are going to activate your plan. You have a plan, right? Or you're going to have one. You're going to execute each step of that plan in order, which is, I'm going to get up, I'm going to turn off the gas, I'm going to turn on the radio, listen for news, whatever it is you decide your order is, that's how you're going to execute it. You're going to do it that way every single time. Practice, practice, practice. Because this has to become muscle memory. The first thing that happens when a disaster occurs is your brain checks out. You become stressed. Stress makes us stupid. Okay? So, if we practice this and we make this muscle memory, I just know, oh, earthquake occurred. I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and it just becomes normal. It's habit. That's where we want to get to. We want to execute each step of that plan in order. Yes?
Regarding the order, is there any like manual as to what are the steps that need to be taken in what order or something?
So what I would strongly suggest is you are the most important person always. You are the most important person. So take care of yourself first. Figure out, am I okay physically and mentally? Can I psychologically respond to this? Okay? Some of us have children, and we're like, I don't know if I can do that. Start thinking about that now. Okay? So check yourself. You're the most important person. Check yourself. Check your family. Now I've checked my family. Everything's okay. Now I'm going to get up. I'm going to grab my flashlight. You're going to get some homework here in a little bit. I'm going to grab my flashlight. I'm going to put on my shoes because this is happening at 2:30 in the morning, right? And now I'm going to walk around and I'm going to go, okay, the house looks good, but as I'm walking around checking the house out, I'm headed out to my gas meter. Do I smell gas? I do. Turn it off. Now I walk to the water outside. Is there water flowing on the street? Was there water in the house when I was walking around? There was. Turn off the water. So I'm creating this process, this flow. I don't know how you live, where you live, so you're going to need to create that on your own. But figure out a systematic way to figure out how you're going to respond. And then respond in a calm, methodical, and professional manner. You've changed your perspective by being here tonight. Earthquakes are not scary. They're just events that happen. And if you prepare for them and you put everything in place, you're going to basically, oh, it just happened. I know what I need to do. I'm going to do this in a calm manner. Just an earthquake. That's all it is. Okay. So your homework. Grab a bag at home. It could be a drawstring bag. It could be a plastic bag. Doesn't matter. And you're going to put some shoes in it. You're going to put a whistle in it, a flashlight, and a radio. And you're going to take that and you're going to put it right at the base of your bed. Because at 2:30 in the morning, when the power's out, you're just going to reach down, you're going to grab that bag, you're going to have your shoes, protect you from broken glass, right? You're going to have a flashlight so you can see what's going on. You're going to have a radio so I can listen to what's happening. And I'm gonna have a whistle in case I need to signal for help. Yes,
Will you have to change the batteries in the flashlight?
I would.
Because they'll get.
So do you change your battery in your smoke alarm?
Yes.
And you do that when? Every time there's a time change?
Yes.
Yes?
No.
So get in the habit of using the time change as an event to change batteries in your smoke alarm, your flashlights, your radios. Use that also as an opportunity to do your drills. But this will be by your bed, so when it does happen, you will have something. You'll already have changed your perspective on what an earthquake is and what it does. And now it's not this scary thing in the middle of the night and you're going, whoa, what do I do? You know what you're going to do. I'm going to reach down, I'm going to grab that bag, and now I'm going to start going through my plan. And I'm just going to do what I need to do. Did I help change your perspective?
Are you from the city of Livermore?
I am. I'm the emergency manager. And in the back is my card, and I have the handout for you too.
Your card's not back there.
Oh, it's not? Maybe they were all gone. Oh, you know what? I have them in my pocket.
Yeah.
So I will leave those right up here. Any questions? Yes?
I just wanted to give my perspective. I did encounter an earthquake once, but it was 1990, I think. It was the Gulf War. I lived in Israel at the time, and we would get missiles launched from Iraq to Israel. So for like 5 weeks, every night at 2 a.m. in the morning, we'd hear a siren, we would put our gas masks on, get to our room, shelter room, whatever. So the first night was scary, but then we knew what we needed to do the second, the third, and the fourth night with, practice.
And
So
that was-
eventually, it creates resilience, and you know what to do.
That's right, and it totally changed, a Scud missile coming in at you, not knowing what's in the area, that's scary. But you had practiced, you had the gas mask, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. And then over time, it became routine.
Yeah.
And that's what earthquakes become. People that live in Japan, they get earthquakes, big earthquakes, what we would call big, on a daily basis. They get 5.0 earthquakes almost daily. That would freak us out. There, it's just kind of boom, earthquake, no big deal. And when they start getting to 7 and 8, yeah, they start freaking out. But it's just a matter of perspective. And as you experience, it's something as if you train for it and you're ready for it, we can get through it. Other questions?
That's just interesting that in Japan they have, I met a few people from Japan and I remember them saying that before, we get them all the time.
And they did. Well, if there's nothing else, I thank you. Oh, yes, yes.
What is the incident command system?
Oh, so the incident command system is how the city and the first responders will respond. Actually, any incident or event, it's the organizational structure they use. So you have a command area or your management group, and you have operations, planning, logistics, and then your admin and finance. And each one of those is a function to support whatever's going on. So if we had an earthquake, our operations people would be our firefighters, police, public works, the people out in the field. Our admin finance would be people paying for stuff.
So they are similar to ICS and those firemen?
Just like what the fire department uses.
Okay.
Yes?
Can you send this PowerPoint to the email address that I have here?
Yes. So if you leave your information, I can send the PowerPoint to you. It will also be available on the city website. If you just go on the city website and look for emergency management, I think it's on About Us. There's an emergency management link, and this will be on there also.
That's what I want to ask you, where I can see this.
Yeah, it will be there.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes?
My sons are in Boy Scouts, and how they can help and volunteer as a Boy Scout troop if this in case of like earthquake.
So one of the first things to do is, make sure that you get your training, do your first aid merit badge, do your, all of those. And then, one of the things you might want to think about is doing, I don't know if they do team cert through the fire department here. but some places offer what's called Teen Cert, and that would be a good one, a good place to start.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Well, if not, I thank you all for coming this evening. I work here for you, so if you have questions or you need anything, my card's back there, give me a call. I will try and help you out any way I can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.